I just think we have to get a little bit better putting ourselves in a timeline circumstance. So when we stop and think about it, okay, we're constantly putting ourselves under pressure here within our team structure.
Functioning under pressure is something that I really do believe can be a learned behavior that causes people to hyperfocus, lock in, and that's where preparation meets opportunity.
I know what the date is going to be. I know what location. What's the next step? What am I going to say? I said, nope, sign the contract.
Matt Weaver, the #1 mortgage originator in the United States for most loans closed in 2023 and #1 in the state of Florida from 2020 to present, has spent over 27 years mastering the purchase market, earning more than 16 #1 titles across his career. Max Fisch, 2024's #1 originator in the United States under 30 and #2 in the state of Florida, achieved those titles within just 5 years of entering the mortgage industry, compressing decades of growth into a few extraordinary years. Collectively, they've helped more than 40,000 families purchase their first home. Now partners and looking to improve the industry on a national scale, Matt and Max share their winning formula, team structure and systems with originators who want to scale from elite to extraordinary levels.
So we've all heard the fact that coal under pressure equals a diamond. Okay. And so let's talk about pressure, because I have to tell you something. Pressure, of course, as we know, is a privilege. And I think we get the best of ourselves with and through pressure. So when we stop and think about it, okay, we're constantly putting ourselves under pressure here within our team structure on all of the initiatives that we're trying to push forward. Um, you and I talk about this all the time. Okay. There's an F13 member of ours, Scott Evans, great guy. He was one of our original members at F13, and I'll never forget it. He wanted to start, after a few months of being in the program, he wanted to start doing events, luncheons, emulating what it is that we're doing here in Florida. And Scott is such an exciting guy. He turned around and he said, "Okay, Matt, I'm ready to do my first event. What's the first step? What am I going to say?" I said, "No. The first step is to mark the calendar. What is the date of your first event?" He said, "Okay, I just marked the calendar. What's the next step? What am I going to say?" I said, "Nope. The next step is location. Where are you going to have your luncheon?" He said, "Okay, I figured that out. I know what the date is going to be. I know what location. What's the next step? What am I going to say?" I said, "Nope. Sign the contract. Commit yourself to the location." He turns around and he signs the contract. He said, "At this point in time, am I going to finally know what to say?" I said, "Scott, you're several weeks out. Don't worry." Then we moved over to how are we going to ramp up for marketing. Then, of course, we got into rehearsing the content and material. Scott, I think, has done probably over 200 seminars, I want to say, and has been building his business extraordinarily well in the California market. But if you take a look at that, that's what we do here in everything that we do. Okay. We look at the calendar, we put the timeline on it, and we work backwards, because now we're under pressure. If we don't put the timeline on it, it becomes floating. Okay. So for example, here we are, December, whatever date it is. I mean, time flies by. I have no idea. Okay. And so for us, we're now marking out our events calendar. Now, could you imagine if we didn't select a date for the next, we're going to call it 15 luncheons that we do? Then the goalpost slides. Okay. It might go from then January, let's call it 12th or 13th, over to now January 21st. We just lost 10 days. Okay. And we don't want to lose time. Our philosophy, Max, as you know, is everything is yesterday.
Functioning under pressure is something that I really do believe can be a learned behavior. Some people are naturally good at functioning under pressure, and some people need to learn how to cope with it, because I don't think it's a universal concept, meaning pressure can sometimes derail people when they're not prepared. And I think preparation is very important in what you're doing. And that's similar to what you're speaking to, which is, okay, let's add pressure. Now let's get prepared. Okay. And I think that that's very important. And I know that I always do this, so I apologize, but I want to drive it back to sports again, because there's so many players that we would consider clutch. And why are they clutch? Well, because there's something psychologically about pressure that causes people to hyperfocus, lock in, and that's where preparation meets opportunity, which is if you've prepared yourself for those moments of pressure and coping with that pressure and using it as a superpower rather than it being debilitating, right? I think that that's where people can really start to excel in their business, which I think our team, the Matt Weaver team, has done excellent at. And as you said, we implement those pressures all the time. So I think learning how to function in that pressure is critical when you're constantly creating, when you're thinking, when you're rolling out new ideas, when you're setting up for seminars, when you're doing all of these things to grow your business. Really focus on setting the pressure and then learning how to operate at a high level through it. And I think if you do that, the sky's the limit.
Without a doubt. I mean, human beings are extraordinary people.
Mhm.
Okay, and we are as good as the amount of pressure we put onto ourselves.
Yeah,
And that's just, what happens is that I think a lot of people devalue themselves in so many ways. Okay, it's amazing what the human will can do if it's put under the pressure of doing something. I just think we have to get a little bit better putting ourselves in a timeline circumstance,
yes,
understanding that everything is yesterday. I mean, look, life is short. There's just no question about it. Cliche and all, and I get that. But the reality is it's the truth. So we don't have all this time. So the way that we can perform at a higher level is to commit to the calendar and make sure we hit that calendar and work backwards from the dates that we're choosing.
absolutely. I think you're generating, can we call it some motivation by adding pressure?
Without it,
I remember you shared a story with me a few weeks ago when you went to a Miami Heat game,
yeah,
and you were in person and you noticed that the game is 48 minutes long, but in the last 5 minutes, when the players started to feel a little extra pressure, they played just a little bit harder.
yes,
And so I think that that again directly correlates to what we're discussing, which is there's something about that. There's something about, as you said, human beings, when you're pressured to do something, it motivates. And so that's something very, very key for our businesses and to realize for our personal lives as well.
no question. Appreciate you, Max.
Thank you, Matt.